Wyoming Territory, February 1890. The root cellar smelled of ash, rot, and cold earth. Haws Maddox dropped through the trapdoor without hesitation, lantern in one hand, rifle in the other. The burned-out homestead above was nothing but blackened beams and snow-drowned rubble. Whoever she was, she had chosen a smart place to hide. Too smart for someone with her price on her head. The light found her in the far corner, crouched between broken barrels like an animal waiting for a final blow. She was enormous. Her body filled the small space, wool skirts stretched tight over a wide frame, shoulders rounded inward as if she were trying to occupy less air than she deserved. Her face was pale, almost colorless, eyes dark and still. She did not scream. Haws stepped forward and seized her arm. She was warm, alive, solid. He hauled her up with little effort. "Dolores Vega?" he asked, pulling the poster from his coat. The sketch was crude, but the description was unmistakable. Obese white female, 5 feet 4 inches, approximately 300 pounds. Wanted for murder and embezzlement. Reward $5,000. "Yes," she said quietly, no denial, no bargaining, no tears. That unsettled him more than any gunfire. He shackled her wrists, the iron biting into soft flesh, then threaded a rope through the chain and tied the other end to his saddle horn. "You try to run, I drag you," he said. "Understand?" She nodded once. "Good. Move." Outside, the Wyoming winter bit hard. The plains were buried in snow, the sky a sheet of dull iron. His horse snorted impatiently as Dolores stepped forward, boots sinking, breath rasping. She walked slowly, each step an effort. Her legs trembled. Haws slowed his horse to a crawl so she wouldn't be pulled off her feet. He felt irritation claw up his spine. $5,000 was worth the trouble, but hauling a woman this size across the territory would be a nightmare. "You got money on you?" he asked, glancing back. "No. Then your worthless cargo's slowing me down. If my horse dies because of you, I'm leaving you for the wolves." She said nothing. She just walked. Most fugitives cursed him. Some prayed. Others tried to charm him, threaten him, promise him riches they didn't have. This woman did none of that. She moved like someone already dead, going through the motions because there was nothing else to do. It made his skin crawl. By dusk, they were miles from the ruins. Haws built a small fire, tied her to a tree, and ate without offering her more than hardtack and water. She accepted it silently, eyes on the flames. He studied her while pretending not to. She was not stupid. He saw it in the way her gaze tracked everything, the way she memorized the terrain, the sound of his horse, the way his rifle rested against the saddle. He had hunted men for years. Killers, thieves, deserters. He knew the look of someone planning something. Dolores Vega looked like someone remembering. Her mind, meanwhile, was sharper than the wind. She had known they would come. From the moment she fled Cheyenne with the stolen ledger pages hidden in her skirts, she had known the mayor would not allow her to reach a courtroom alive. He would not allow her to speak. The man they sent, Haws Maddox, was exactly the kind of instrument he would choose. Scarred, efficient, unsentimental, the kind of man who believed in contracts more than mercy. He despised her. She saw it in his jaw, in the way his eye flicked over her body with open contempt. She did not blame him. She despised herself often enough. The world had taught her that her size made her obscene, invisible, ridiculous. They had talked about murder and bribery in front of her because they assumed no one like her could matter. They had been wrong. She remembered everything, every conversation, every payment, every name, and that memory was a death sentence. She watched the fire burn and listened to Haws breathe. She memorized the cadence, the pauses, the weight of his footsteps when he shifted. He thought she was cargo. She knew he was about to become her shield. When a person is reduced to a number on a poster, the world forgets that they were once a child, once a dreamer, once someone who believed they mattered. Compassion is expensive on the frontier. Judgment is cheap. And sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone has already decided does not matter at all. Dolores Vega is supposed to be nothing more than a bounty and a burden. But the man who captured her is about to learn that memory can be a weapon, and that some witnesses are more dangerous alive than dead. Follow this story to see what happens when a hunter becomes a target and a fugitive becomes the most valuable woman in the territory. Wyoming Territory, on the Winter Trail, February 1890. They left before dawn. Haws did not wake her gently. He tugged the rope once, hard, and Dolores rose without complaint, stiff and slow, breath already fogging the air. The chains at her wrists clinked softly as she walked, the sound steady, almost measured. Snow squeaked under their boots. The land opened wide and empty, rolling white all the way to the horizon. Civilization thinned behind them with every mile, fences disappearing, roads dissolving into suggestion. This was where contracts mattered more than courts. By noon, the wind rose. Dolores lagged. Haws felt it through the rope before he saw it, an added drag, a heavier pull at the saddle horn. "Keep up," he said without turning. "I am." Her voice was flat, but her breathing was not. Each inhale rasped, deep and labored. He slowed despite himself, irritation warring with calculation. If she collapsed out here, he would lose time, and time, in winter, killed. They stopped at a frozen creek to water the horse. Dolores sank onto a rock, hands trembling. "You planning to die on me?" Haws asked. "No," she said, "just resting." He snorted. "You don't get to rest. You're not free." She looked up at him then. Really looked. At the scar tissue that pulled one side of his face downward, at the blind eye that never quite lined up with the world. "Neither are you," she said quietly. He stiffened. "Careful." "I'm being careful," she replied. "That's why I'm still alive." They moved on. That night, the snow came hard and sudden. Haws spotted a shallow cut in the land and pushed them into it, using the embankment to block the wind. He set camp fast, movements economical, practiced. Dolores watched every step. He chained her to himself this time, the iron biting cold through her sleeves. "So I don't wander," she said. "So you don't vanish," he corrected. She nodded, accepting the truth of it. The fire burned low, hunched against the storm. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Dolores broke the silence. "You won't make it to Cheyenne." Haws's hand tightened on his tin cup. "You predicting the weather now?" "I'm stating fact." He turned toward her, face hard. "Explain." "There are men following us," she said. "Not deputies, not marshals. Men hired to kill me." "That's convenient." "They're not interested in you," she continued calmly. "Not yet. Once I'm dead, you become a liability." Haws stared into the fire, weighing her words. He had felt it too, the sense of being watched, of movement just outside certainty. "If they wanted you dead, they'd have done it already," he said. "They tried," Dolores replied. "You just happened to be faster." The storm swallowed the rest of her words, but doubt had already lodged itself deep. The first shot came after midnight. The bullet cracked stone inches from Haws's head. He rolled, rifle up, firing blind into the darkness. Muzzle flashes winked back at him from the ridge. Too many, and their angles were wrong. They weren't bracketing him. They were lining up on Dolores. Haws moved without thinking. He lunged, threw his body over hers as another shot tore through the space where her head had been. "Stay down!" he snarled. "They're not after my arrest," Dolores said, voice steady despite the chaos. "They're after my silence." Haws fired again, cursed, then yanked her up by the chain. "Run!" "I can't." "You will." They crashed through brush and snow, bullets chasing them. Haws felt one graze his ribs, hot and sharp. He didn't slow. They dove into the trees, then into the shell of an abandoned trapper's cabin, barely standing. Haws slammed the door, overturned a table, braced it with his shoulder. For a moment there was only breath and blood and cold. Then he turned on her. "Talk." Dolores sat heavily on the floor, chest heaving. "I was the mayor's accountant." Haws blinked. "That's it?" "Mayor Charles Finch, railroad interests, land seizures, contract killings." She met his eye. "They talked in front of me because they thought I was invisible." "You're wanted for murder." "I'm wanted because I remember everything," she said. "Every name, every payment, every body." Haws leaned back against the wall, laughing once, harsh and disbelieving. "So you're not worth $5,000. "No," she said. "I'm worth a trial." "And that's why they're here." "Yes." Outside, boots crunched closer, voices murmured confident. Haws swore under his breath. "We can't go back." "I know, and I can't let you go." She smiled faintly. "Then we have a problem." He studied her, really studied her, not as cargo or bounty, but as risk, as leverage, as something alive and dangerous. Finally, he cut the rope from the saddle horn and looped it through his own belt instead. "You stay close," he said. "You move when I move." She nodded. "That's all I've ever done." They slipped out the back of the cabin and into the trees, leaving the fire burning as bait. The world narrowed to footsteps and breath, to the shared rhythm of survival. Prejudice simplifies the world. It turns people into shapes, labels, burdens. It teaches us who to fear and who to ignore. But the frontier is an unforgiving teacher. Out here, survival belongs not to the fastest or the prettiest, but to those who see clearly. The question is not who looks dangerous, but who actually is. They fled north, deeper into the wild, no longer hunter and prize. Now they were something else, bound not by iron alone, but by necessity. Bighorn Mountains, 3 days later. The mountains rose like a verdict. Haws had pushed them north, away from roads and towns, into terrain that punished mistakes quickly and without apology. Snow lay deeper here, wind scoured ridges cutting skin raw, valleys filled with blue-shadowed cold. Dolores struggled. Her breath came hard, her pace uneven, but she did not complain. That, more than anything, unsettled him. They walked in silence, bound by the rope looped between them, not chains now. Distance measured by trust and danger. Haws set the pace. Dolores matched it as best she could, counting steps, regulating breath, filing away every sound. On the 4th day, the wall finally struck. They were crossing a narrow slope when the ice gave way beneath her boot. Dolores pitched sideways with a startled cry. The rope snapped taut, yanking Haws off balance. He slammed hard against the rock, pain exploding through his thigh. They lay tangled for a moment, the wind roaring past them. "Don't move," Haws growled, breath white and ragged. "I'm sorry," Dolores said. The words came out instinctively, old and worn. "I didn't see—" "Stop," he snapped. "You fall, you die, you apologize, we both die." She froze. He dragged himself upright and hauled her back onto stable ground. When he straightened, his leg buckled. He caught himself on his rifle, teeth bared against the pain. Dolores saw the blood immediately, dark against the snow. "You're hurt." "Fine," he said too fast. She knelt, despite the cold biting through her skirts. Her hands were clumsy at first, then steadied as she exposed the wound. The bullet had torn through muscle, ugly but not fatal. Infection was the real threat out here. "You should have let me fall," she said quietly. Haws stared down at her, breath harsh. "And let them find you alone." "No." Something in his voice cracked, not loud, not dramatic, just enough. Dolores worked with the certainty of memory. She tore fabric, packed the wound, tied it tight. Her fingers did not tremble. "You've done this," he said. "I watched men bleed to death because no one bothered to remember how to help them," she replied. "I remembered." They made camp early that night beneath a rock overhang, barely large enough for two bodies, and a fire. The wind clawed at the opening. Haws shivered despite the flames. Dolores shifted closer without asking, her mass blocking the draft, her warmth undeniable. He stiffened, then let it happen. "You're not what I expected," he said after a long silence. "No one ever expects me," she replied. He looked at her then, not at her size, not at the rope, but at her face, at the calm focus, the endurance, the intelligence he had nearly dismissed. "You could have left," he said, "when I fell." She met his gaze steadily. "So could you, the first night, when you still thought I was worthless." The fire popped. The mountains loomed indifferent. Haws leaned back against the stone, pain throbbing in time with his pulse. For the first time in years, he felt the edge of fear, not of death, but of failure. "If my leg goes bad," he said, "you won't outrun them." Dolores did not hesitate. "Then we don't outrun them." He frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means we stop being prey," she said, "and start being expensive." He barked a short, incredulous laugh. "You planning strategy now?" "I've been planning since Cheyenne," she replied. "I just needed you alive long enough to listen." Outside, the wind howled against the stone. Inside the narrow shelter, something shifted. The wall between them, hunter and hunted, contempt and resignation, cracked under pressure. The first fracture in any prejudice comes not from argument, but from dependence. When survival demands cooperation, illusion becomes a luxury no one can afford. The cold does not care who deserves help. It only asks who will give it when the moment arrives. Haws stared into the fire, jaw tight. "All right," he said finally. "You talk. I listen." Dolores exhaled, slow and careful. The mountains listened too. High Bighorn Basin, late winter, 1890. They found the basin by following the creek. It cut through the mountains like a scar, ice sheathed but still moving beneath. The sound of water, a low promise of life. The land opened into a bowl of pines and wind-broken rock where the snow lay thinner and the air felt less murderous. Haws stopped there, breathing hard. "Here," he said. "We hold?" Dolores nodded. She was past arguing, past fear, too, in a way that surprised her. The chase had burned something out of her, leaving a strange clarity behind. They built shelter the way two desperate people do, fast, ugly, effective. A lean-to wedged between boulders, pine boughs layered thick against the wind, a fire pit dug deep and vented carefully so smoke would disperse low and wide. Haws moved stiffly, favoring his injured leg. Dolores compensated without comment, hauling branches, packing snow, anchoring lines with her weight when his balance failed. "You don't have to," he started once. "I know," she said. "I'm choosing to." That silenced him. When the shelter was done, Haws sat heavily and let his head rest against the rock. Fever had crept back into his eyes. Dolores knelt and checked his leg again, red, hot, angry. "You'll lose it if we don't get ahead of this," she said. He grimaced. "Do what you have to." She boiled snow, cleaned the wound, cut away dead tissue with his knife. Her hands were steady, her breathing even. She talked while she worked, not to distract him, but to anchor herself. Ledger entries, names, dates, the rhythm of memory she had lived with for years. Haws listened, jaw clenched, sweat breaking across his scarred face. "You remember all this?" he said hoarsely. "Every word." "Yes." "Doesn't it ever stop?" "No." She bound the leg tight, then settled beside him, her body braced against the windward side of the shelter. He noticed, dimly, how effective the difference was. The cold retreated. The fire held. That night he slept. It was the first deep sleep he'd had since before the trapper's cabin. Dolores stayed awake, listening for footsteps, feeding the fire, counting his breaths the way her mother had taught her when storms came and roofs groaned under snow. In the morning, the fever had broken. Haws woke disoriented, one hand reaching instinctively for his rifle. Dolores was there, solid and real, handing him water. "You stayed," he said. "Yes." He studied her as if seeing her for the first time. Not the wanted poster, not the cargo. A woman who had chosen to remain when leaving would have been easier. They stayed in the basin for days. Haws healed slowly. Dolores learned the rhythms of the place, where the snow melted first, where rabbits ran, how to read the sky through the trees. Haws taught her how to set snares properly, how to skin without wasting, how to listen for the wrong kind of quiet. She surprised him again and again. She was careful, not clumsy, strong, not slow. Her size made her steady in deep snow where he slipped. Her memory caught patterns he missed, tracks that doubled back, birds that went silent too quickly. One afternoon, as he showed her how to sight along the rifle barrel, he realized his hands were guiding hers without thinking. The contact startled him. He pulled back. She did not flinch. "Sorry," he muttered. "It's fine," she said, and after a pause, "You don't touch people much." "No." "Me neither." They shared a look, brief and understanding. At night, the shelter was too small to pretend distance. They slept on opposite sides at first, backs to the rock. When the temperature dropped sharply, Haws shifted closer without comment. Dolores adjusted, her body a living wall against the cold. Neither spoke of it. Dolores began to change, not in size, not in shape, in posture. She stopped folding inward, stopped apologizing for taking up space. When she moved, she did so with purpose, her weight something she used instead of hid. When she spoke, Haws listened, not out of politeness, but because she was usually right. One evening, while mending a torn glove, she said, "They'll keep coming." "I know." "Even if we cross the border." "I know." She tied off the thread, hand still. "If I testify, men will die." "Men have already died," he said, "because of them." "And if I don't," she continued, "nothing changes." Haws leaned back, staring at the fire. "You thinking of the courthouse?" I'm thinking of choosing, she replied, for the first time. He looked at her then, really looked, the confidence that had grown quietly, the steadiness, the intelligence sharpened by survival. You don't need me to do that, he said. She shook her head. I don't need you. I want you. The words hung between them heavy and unadorned. Haws felt something loosen in his chest. Fear, maybe, or the habit of being alone. I'm not a hero, he said. I know, Dolores replied. Neither am I. That night, when the wind screamed down from the peaks, they slept facing each other. No urgency, no pretense, just shared warmth and breath and the unspoken understanding that this small, hard-won safety, was real. A haven is not a place without danger. It is a place where one is no longer alone inside it. Growth does not always announce itself with triumph. Sometimes it is quiet, gradual, built from daily choices to remain visible, to take up space, to trust another person with the truth of who you are. In the basin, winter began to loosen its grip, and with it, so did the past. Bighorn Mountains, late winter, 1890. The past did not arrive all at once. It seeped in. Haws noticed it first in the birds, the way they lifted from the trees too early, too suddenly. Dolores noticed it in the creek. The water disturbed upstream in a rhythm that did not belong to ice-breaking or animals drinking. Men, they both knew without speaking. They didn't give up, Haws said, checking his rifle. Dolores shook her head. They never do, not when there's too much at stake. By dusk, they saw the smoke, thin, careful, hidden low in the trees on the far side of the basin. How many? Haws asked. Dolores closed her eyes for a heartbeat, sorting memory the way others sorted cards. 6, she said, the same ones who tried before. Finch doesn't trust replacements. Haws swore softly. His leg held him now, but not well enough for a clean fight in open ground. They'll wait, he said. Try to box us in. Yes, Dolores replied, because they think I'm still the weak point. The fire in the shelter burned low. Snow whispered against pine needles. The basin felt suddenly smaller. Listen to me, Haws said. If it comes to it, you run. Dolores looked at him, really looked. Run where? Anywhere but here. And leave you? He didn't answer. She leaned forward, voice calm but unyielding. This is where the choice is, Haws. Not later, not in a courtroom, right now. He met her gaze. Choice between what? Between surviving alone, she said, or surviving changed. The first shot came just after dark, not aimed, a warning, a test. Haws extinguished the fire instantly. Darkness swallowed the shelter. Dolores's breathing remained steady, controlled. They want us scared, she whispered. They want you desperate, Haws corrected. Another voice carried across the basin, familiar, confident. Dolores Vega, Thomas Carver called. You don't have to die cold. She closed her eyes. Carver's voice slotted neatly into place with dozens of remembered conversations. They're spaced wide, she said quietly, triangulating. Haws shifted position. You can see that in the dark? I can hear it. Carver spoke again. Your protector can't keep you safe forever. Come out, and we make it quick. Dolores stood. Haws grabbed her wrist. No. Yes, she said. This ends when they stop believing they control the story. She stepped out into the open. Snow reflected enough moonlight to outline her figure clearly. Large, unmistakable, vulnerable. Every rifle in the trees trained on her. Stop, Haws hissed. Dolores raised her voice, calm and carrying. Thomas Carver, Bill McKenzie, Samson Drake, Joe Holloway, Vernon Pike. A pause. You didn't expect me to remember all of you, she continued, but you expected Finch to remember you, to pay you, to protect you. Movement in the trees, unease. You want to know why he sent you instead of deputies? Dolores asked. Because deputies leave records, and records lead back to him. Shut her up, someone shouted. No, Dolores said gently. Listen, because this part matters. She turned her head slightly, addressing a shape in the shadows. Joe Holloway, your boy Samuel is still at St. Mary's. Finch's men visited last month. He signed the labor transfer himself. I remember the ink blot on the corner of the page. Joe's rifle dipped. Dolores shifted her gaze. Vernon Pike. Clara's letters didn't stop when you left. She's 3 months along. Finch paid the midwife extra to keep quiet. A curse broke the night. And Bill, Dolores finished, you were never meant to get paid. Finch told Mackenzie you talk too much when you drink. The voucher for your replacement is dated next week. Silence. Heavy. Breathing. Snow settling. Power survives on silence and fear. It depends on people believing they are alone in what they know. But truth has weight. When spoken aloud, it shifts balances, fractures alliances, and reveals how fragile loyalty becomes when survival is no longer shared. A rifle cracked, not at Dolores. At another rifle, chaos exploded, men shouted, shots tore through the trees, alliances collapsed in seconds under the strain of doubt Dolores had planted. Haws moved then. He did not charge. He did not shout. He hunted. Each shot was deliberate, final. The basin filled with echoes and falling snow. Dolores stood where she was, heart pounding, trusting him because she had already chosen to. When the last echo died, only wind remained. Haws limped back into view, smoke curling from his barrel. His face was unreadable, but his hands shook faintly. They're done, he said. Dolores exhaled slowly. Finch won't stop. No, Haws agreed, but now he's afraid. She turned to him. So what's the sacrifice? He frowned. What sacrifice? She stepped closer. You know what I know. If I testify, he'll come for you. You could walk away right now. Disappear. Haws studied her for a long moment. Then he shook his head. I've been disappearing my whole life. And now? Now I stand. She swallowed. With me? With you. Sacrifice is not always the act of letting go. Sometimes it is the refusal to do so. Love does not ask who deserves protection. It asks who you are willing to become when you give it. The basin lay quiet again, but the shadow had returned and been named Bighorn Mountains, the last night of winter, 1890. The snow did not stop falling. It thickened, heavy and wet, the kind that swallowed sound and turned distance into guesswork. The basin became a bowl of white silence, every tree a potential witness, every shadow a threat. Haws's leg failed him halfway back to the shelter. It was not dramatic. No shout, no collapse, just a sudden slackness, the body deciding without permission. He caught himself on the rifle, teeth grinding as pain flared hot and dizzying. Dolores was there instantly. She took his weight the way she had learned to do everything lately, deliberately. No apology, no hesitation. She braced him with her shoulder wide and steady and eased him down behind a boulder. You're done walking, she said. I can still. No, she cut in, calm and absolute. You can still shoot. That's what I need. He looked at her, surprised, not at the firmness, he had learned that, but at the certainty. She was not asking, she was assigning roles. What are you thinking? He asked. She scanned the basin, eyes tracking slope and wind. They'll send Finch himself now, or someone close enough to matter. You're guessing. I'm remembering, she said. Men like Finch don't accept losses. They escalate. A sound carried faintly through the snow. Hooves, one horse, slow, confident. Haws swore under his breath. You're right. They moved into position with what time they had. Dolores dragged a fallen log into place, packed snow tight around it, then widened the narrow choke where the basin funneled into trees. She tested the ground with her boot, felt it sag. Here, she said, this is where he'll come. Haws took position behind the rock, rifle braced. His breath came hard, each one measured. If this goes wrong, it won't, she said, because I won't let it. The horse emerged first, head low against the weather, then the rider. Charles Finch dismounted carefully, boots clean despite the snow, coat too fine for the country. He carried a pistol, not a rifle. He had always preferred distance, moral and physical. Dolores, he called, voice smooth and practiced, this has gone far enough. She stepped into view. Haws felt his chest tighten. Every instinct screamed at him to pull her back, but he stayed still, trusted her. Finch smiled when he saw her, the smile of a man who believed he was speaking to something owned. You've cost me a great deal, he said. Men, money, time. Dolores met his gaze. You cost me my life, years of it. You just didn't notice. He chuckled. You were paid, fed, housed. Silenced, she corrected. Used. His smile thinned. Come back with me. We can fix this. You testify, you implicate yourself. You die anyway, or you come home, and I make sure you're taken care of. Haws felt his finger tighten on the trigger. Dolores laughed softly, not bitter, clear. You never understood, she said. I don't need you to protect me anymore. Finch's eyes flicked past her, searching. Where is he? Dolores shifted her weight. The ground gave way, not all at once, just enough. Finch stumbled as the snowpack collapsed beneath him, the crust breaking, the hidden hollow yawning open. He went down hard, pistol skidding across ice. Haws fired. The shot was clean. Final. Silence followed, broken only by the horse's frightened snort as it bolted into the trees. Dolores stood over the edge, breathing hard. She did not look down. Haws dragged himself forward, legs screaming. He reached her side and caught her hand before she could pull away. It's done, he said. She nodded. It is. She turned then, and he saw it. The tremor she had held back, the release. He wrapped his arms around her, scars and all, and she leaned into him fully, unafraid of the space she took. Strength is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act while fear watches. The world teaches some people they are shields only when broken, tools only when spent. But true power is the ability to choose, to stand not because one must, but because one will. They stayed until dawn, until the snow softened and the basin breathed again. When they finally moved, it was together. Southern Alberta, early summer, 1891. Spring did not arrive all at once. It came in concessions. In meltwater threading through snow like silver wire, in grass daring to show green where blood had darkened the ground months before. They crossed the border quietly, moving when the weather allowed, resting when Haws's leg demanded it. Healing was not a straight line. Some mornings Haws woke ready to walk. Other days pain nailed him to the earth, and he stared at the sky as if daring it to argue. Dolores learned the pattern of it, what stiffness meant rest, what heat meant trouble, what silence meant endurance. She learned without resentment. She had learned worse lessons before. They found the roadhouse by accident, a half-ruined place at the edge of a timber road where freight wagons slowed and men drank hard to forget distances. The owner had died over winter. The books were a mess. The debts were worse. Dolores asked to see the ledger by sundown. She knew which names would pay and which would vanish if pressed. By morning, the men who lingered decided to stay. The Bear and the Rose reopened on a Tuesday, which felt right. Nothing dramatic, just necessary. Haws built a chair for her first, not a throne, a working chair, reinforced joints, wide legs, balanced so it wouldn't tip when she leaned forward to write. He built it with the care of a man who understood that failure here would mean shame she no longer deserved. "Too much?" he asked when he set it down. She tested it, rocking once, twice. It held. "Enough," she said, and smiled. They worked in parallel. Haws kept watch, cleaned rifles, learned the rhythms of the road and the men who traveled it. Dolores ran the books with ruthless precision. She remembered faces, remembered habits, remembered who paid late and who never paid at all. No one cheated her twice. At night, when the place went quiet and the lamps burned low, they talked, not about Cheyenne, not about Finch, not about what had been taken. They talked about weather patterns and freight schedules, about which stories were worth telling to strangers and which were not, about a daughter Haws once had, whose name he spoke only once and never again. Dolores listened and did not ask him to make it smaller. When the nightmares came, they did not pretend they were something else. Sometimes Haws woke choking on breath, hand reaching for a rifle that was already there. Dolores would sit with him solid and calm, humming under her breath until his pulse slowed. Other nights, Dolores sat bolt upright, mind racing through names and dates as if counting would keep them at bay. Haws would place a hand over hers and say nothing. It was enough. Healing took the shape of work. It took the shape of choosing to remain. By autumn, Haws could walk the length of the road without stopping. He limped. He always would. He learned to accept it the way he accepted everything else that mattered, by not lying to himself about what it cost. One evening, a traveler recognized the poster behind the bar, the crude sketch, the words, "Wanted, dead or alive." Dolores watched him notice, watched the moment pass through curiosity and into calculation. Haws did not move. Dolores closed the ledger and met the man's gaze. "That bounty's expired," she said mildly. "So is the man who posted it." The traveler swallowed and looked away. After closing, Haws took the poster down. Dolores stopped him. "Leave it," she said. He hesitated. "Why?" "Because it reminds me what I survived," she replied, "and because I don't disappear anymore." He nodded and put it back. That winter, they framed it properly. Beneath it, Dolores wrote in a careful hand, neat and elegant, "The world called me worthless. He called me necessary." Haws added smaller beneath that, "I listened. They did not marry. Not because they feared it, but because they did not need the proof. Their bond had been forged under weight and fire and consequence. Paper would not strengthen it." On a quiet night, with snow pressing softly at the windows, Haws cleaned his rifle and asked, "Do you ever regret not running?" Dolores closed the books and considered the question as it deserved. "No," she said. "Running taught me where the edges are. Staying taught me who I am." He leaned over and kissed her forehead. A habit now, tender and unremarkable in the best way. Healing does not mean returning to who you were before the wound. It means learning who you become after it. Commitment is not a promise shouted into the future. It is the daily labor of care, the refusal to abandon what has chosen you in return. Outside, the road went on. Inside, the ledgers balanced. They had built something that would hold. Some people survive by becoming smaller, others survive by becoming precise. Dolores Vega was taught that her body made her a burden and her mind an inconvenience. The frontier taught her something else. That memory is weight, that truth bends men, and that strength does not always carry a gun. Haws Maddox hunted her for a bounty. He stayed because he learned what was priceless. If this story stayed with you, sit with it for a moment. Ask yourself who the world taught you to overlook, and what might happen if you listened instead.